5 theories about the Blue Wizards, where they are in Lord of the Rings, and their franchise future. While Gandalf and Saruman play important roles in the Lord of the Rings, the other 3 Asteri aren't nearly as involved in Middle-earth's Third Age conflict. There are 5 Asteri in the Lord of the Rings universe, but J.R.R. Tolkien only spends time fleshing out 3 of them. In addition to Gandalf and Saruman, Radagast gets a decent amount of characterization in Tolkien's lore. The final 2 Asteri, the mysterious Blue Wizards, are briefly discussed, but their whereabouts in the Lord of the Rings and ultimate fates remain unknown. Even Tolkien's writings about the Blue Wizards seem to contradict themselves, raising even more questions about the pair. In Tolkien's essay, The Asteri, he writes that Alatar and Pelando go east with Saruman and never return, implying they fall prey to Sauron or become corrupted by darkness. And one of Tolkien's letters from 1958 also suggests they failed to complete their mission, adding that they were founders or beginners of secret cults. These initial depictions of the Blue Wizards don't paint them in a positive light, but a later mention does. In Last Writings, a collection of Tolkien's unfinished work published by his son, Christopher Tolkien, after he died, Tolkien offers a more optimistic view. He suggests that whatever the Blue Wizards do in the East has a great influence on the history of the Second Age and Third Age, hinting at their contribution to Sauron's defeat. Of course, with so little else to go on, theories about the Blue Wizards continue to crop up. The most intriguing ones explain their absence in The Lord of the Rings and reveal how the Rings of Power could work them into its story. The Blue Wizards' cults were responsible for weakening Sauron. With contradictory takes on the Blue Wizards and little information about their fates, many fans theorize that Tolkien's 2 narratives surrounding these Asteri are both true. While they may form cults in the East and South, this doesn't mean they failed to complete their mission to weaken Sauron. Although they aren't directly involved in the fight against the Dark Lord like Gandalf, some speculate that they help the war effort from the sidelines. This is what Tolkien's final writings imply, and his words can fit with his previous discussions of the Blue Wizards. With the influence of cult leaders, the Blue Wizards would be able to sway the men of Middle-earth away from Sauron's cause. As one Redditor notes, with the influence of cult leaders, the Blue Wizards would be able to sway the men of Middle-earth away from Sauron's cause. If their followers pledge loyalty to them over Sauron, it indirectly helps those fighting against the Lord of the Rings villain. And this theory is compelling, as it paints a more morally gray picture of the 2 Asteri. Their attraction to cults and willingness to lead them suggests the same lust for power that corrupts Saruman. But with this theory, the Blue Wizards have a more positive impact, whether they mean to or not. The Blue Wizards failed, and are still living in Middle-earth. Although both of Tolkien's perceptions of the Blue Wizards can be true, some fans stick to his initial sentiment that they fail. And one theory even suggests they're still living in Middle-earth after the War of the Ring. If the 2 Asteri do get distracted by their cults and individual interests, they don't need much more of a reason to be absent for the Third Age conflict. And as there's no indication that they die, it's safe to assume that they remain in Middle-earth. And as CBR notes, it explains why Gandalf is the only person to leave Middle-earth. Saruman killed the Blue Wizards. One intriguing theory about the Blue Wizards suggests that they aren't around in The Lord of the Rings because they're dead, and this Reddit theory posits they perish at the hands of Saruman. Saruman is the strongest of the Asteri prior to Gandalf returning to Middle-earth as Gandalf the White, and Saruman is said to have gone east with the Blue Wizards. He's the only one who returns, which raises questions about what happens out there. While Tolkien's writings suggest the Blue Wizards simply get sidetracked, this theory offers a more sinister explanation. Saruman's betrayal of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings proves that the White Wizard doesn't have qualms about opposing the other Astari, though his journey east takes place long before he joins Sauron's forces. This theory implies that Saruman's corruption starts earlier than Tolkien lets on, which doesn't seem likely. Of course, if we're going with the less kind view of the Blue Wizards, it's possible Saruman kills them after they're corrupted by the darkness. Both scenarios have holes, but it's a fun theory to explain their absence in The Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power Season 3 will reverse Saruman's story with a Blue Wizards. The introduction of Run's Dark Wizard in the Rings of Power Season 2 likely confirms we're getting a Blue Wizard story in the Amazon series, especially after the showrunner's confirmation that the Dark Wizard isn't Saruman. Given the character's following and location, he's set up to be revealed as either Alatar or Pelando. And one theory posits that the Rings of Power will reverse Saruman's narrative from The Lord of the Rings, taking him on the opposite journey in terms of good and evil. This would integrate both of Tolkien's takes on the Blue Wizards, initially introducing Run's Dark Wizard as a cult leader and villain and eventually redeeming him. This would integrate both of Tolkien's takes on the Blue Wizards, initially introducing Run's Dark Wizard as a cult leader and villain and eventually redeeming him. We haven't seen enough of the character to know if redemption is possible, but going this route would be a great way to explain Tolkien's seemingly contradictory views of the two figures. It would also give Gandalf a chance to bring one Astar back to the light, even though he's unable to do so with Saruman in The Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power will feature both versions of Tolkien's lore with two different characters. The Blue Wizards are lumped together in Tolkien's writings, and so they're often discussed as a unit. One theory suggests that the Rings of Power could challenge this perception, integrating both of Tolkien's takes on the Blue Wizards by having each of them go in opposite directions via Reddit. While there's only one character who meets the description of a Blue Wizard so far, later seasons of the show could introduce another. Then the series could have one of the Astar become a self-serving villain, while the other actively works against Sauron's rise to power. This would be an interesting way to distinguish between the two wizards from Tolkien's lore, and it would showcase the different paths the Astari can take, potentially even mirroring what happens between Gandalf and Saruman in The Lord of the Rings. Only time will tell if the Rings of Power goes this deeply into the Blue Wizard stories, but it's certainly an area of Tolkien's lore that would benefit from expansion. Dwarves are one of the fantasy races in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, and they had magical rings of power forged by Sauron and Celebrimbor, just like the Ringwraiths and the Elves. The Nine famously controlled the Ringwraiths. Meanwhile, the Elves' Rings of Power were shown in Peter Jackson's movies, as well as Amazon Prime Video's TV show. The Dwarf Rings have had less exposure on screen, despite debuting in The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2. In reality, they were dispersed across Middle-earth over the ages, and no dwarf had managed to keep one by the end of The Lord of the Rings.